my name is Lynn Coram, and I'd like to welcome you to my newest production of Town Square. This is our first production, and so bear with us. But as guests, and I want this to be a debate talk show, and our guests are Meredith Angwin from Norwich? Wilder, Vermont.
Wilder, Vermont, just south of Norwich.
And Howard Schaefer from Enfield, New Hampshire, and Tony Bonella from Brattleboro. And my name is Lynn Coram, I'm from Brattleboro. And as our first topic for our first show, we've chosen to invite Meredith and Howard here and Tony to talk about Vermont Yankee, which is currently very much on everybody's minds, and try to find out, talk about nuclear power and see what nuclear power is doing and the role of nuclear power and all those kinds of things. Who knows where this discussion will go? We'll have fun with it. So, Meredith, if we could start with you, could you tell us a little bit about your background and so forth?
Yes. I have a master's degree and worked toward a PhD in mineral chemistry, and then I went into geothermal energy, where I was very happy to join the Electric Power Research Institute and be in the renewables group, renewable energy, because I am in favor of renewable energy. But after a while, I noticed that renewable projects are fought tooth and nail. It's very, very hard to get them put into place. Wind turbines, geothermal plants, biomass plants. And I moved into the nuclear group at that point, and I've been in nuclear energy ever since. Right now, I blog at Yes Vermont Yankee, and I also head the Ethan Allen Institute Energy Education Project.
Thank you very much. And Howard, give us your background, why you're interested in nuclear power and so forth.
I got into nuclear power courtesy of Uncle Sam. I was in Navy ROTC and became a submarine officer after I got out of college, and after almost 8 years in the Navy, I went to work for Basco Services in New York, who were the architect, engineer, and constructor for Vermont Yankee. And July 5th, 1970, I rolled into Brattleboro for the first time, as an adult anyway, to work as a startup engineer there. And just to be brief, my whole career has been in the nuclear power industry. Been at 7 plants like Vermont Yankee as a startup engineer or in support, and others. Retired in 2000, but my first public service was as a congressional fellow in Washington. So for the year 2001, beginning of a new administration of Congress, I was in Washington, D.C., sponsored by the American Nuclear Society through the American Association for the Advancement of Science and their Congressional Fellows Program.
So your background is not only hands-on in the industry, but also into politics, so you've dabbled in both.
Yes, and actually starting when I was here as a startup engineer for Vermont Yankee, there were interveners in the hearings, and I became interested in the question of, am I doing the right thing? Are these people who are intervening correct? And I have pursued that all along, and when I was in Massachusetts working for the Yankee organization supporting Vermont Yankee and other plants, I had a nighttime job as a public speaker and debater and in politics, and first real taste of politics and political action was in 1988 when there was a referendum on the ballot to shut down the 2 nuclear power plants in Massachusetts. And the companies got organized, and I had a significant role through the company with community liaison volunteers, and the referendum was defeated. So I've been pursuing this question of the great nuclear debate in public in parallel to my technical career.
And I would think it would be very fair. I wonder, you have gone in, you start out in nuclear, and then you went back and said, am I doing the right thing?
Yes.
And researched it and come out on the other end supportive of nuclear.
Oh, absolutely, because for every technical argument that is raised by the opponents, I have not only the experience and the education, but the ability to go back into plants, into companies, and find out what the truth is. And all the technical arguments are not right, overblown, or they've made a completely unreasonable risk versus benefit judgment, particularly comparing nuclear power to perfection.
Yeah.
If we did that with any other technology, we wouldn't be flying, we wouldn't be driving, we wouldn't be doing a lot of things. But Congress made that comparison and has continued to make it through all technologies, and has, of course, kept the nuclear power program.
Yeah. And Mr. Vanella?
I have over 31 years of nuclear power experience. I started back in 1978, August of 1978. I came here to Vermont Yankee as a contractor in November of 1988, and I've been here ever since. I was only supposed to be here for 2 or 3 weeks. Fell in love with Vermont, fell in love with Vermont Yankee and the employees and what we represent. And it's a safe, legal, and efficient plant. And met a lot of friends, and it's one of the best operating plants in the industry. I've been around.
And that's not just you saying that. It's been rated such?
Yes, correct. It has been rated such as, there's 103 nuclear power plants in the United States, and our equipment liability has been rated, I think, 98 out of 103.
Okay. But what I'd like to start on first off is the worldview of nuclear. What are other countries doing? How is it regulated worldwide? How does the NRC fit in with the international atomic field? So tell us what you know about that kind of stuff.
I have one comment, and that is the world is going to nuclear. There are many, I don't know, 70 plants under construction, 60 plants under construction.
As we speak?
As we speak, yeah, overseas as we speak. I think one of the most interesting sets of places going to nuclear is the Arab countries. United Arab Emirates is building a nuclear plant. They have a lot of sunshine there, but they cannot run a 24/7 economy on sunshine. They're putting in solar, but they're not trying to run on solar. They have no intention of burning up all their oil to make their own electricity when they can sell it to us at a premium.
And when you burn oil, your environment, your air is not as clean.
Yes.
Would that be one of their?
It probably is one of their reasons, but in all honesty, I think that they just say oil is our resource. We are going to sell it for money that we can buy other things with. And then they're putting in a nuclear plant to make power for their country. They did reject coal on the basis that they didn't want to barge in coal and really mess up their air quality.
Yeah,
What else?
I'm very glad you mentioned that, Meredith. There's 32 countries by count from this year's total from American Nuclear Society's magazine, Nuclear News. Every year they do a status of all the plants in the world. 32 countries, U.S. is one of them, that have nuclear power programs. And U.S. is falling behind because of not building plants. And
So all our plants are at least almost 40 years old.
well, we know we have some that were finished after that and are newer, but nothing. We just have a few that are just getting started on construction. But take China, for instance. They've got many which are far along, and they're going hell-bent for leather because they know what their air quality problems are, and they know what they had to do to clean up the air for the Olympics. And they know they have to get off of coal. And they've examined all the alternatives, and the best by far for them and for India and for these other countries is nuclear.
Well, let's just talk to when a country puts up if a country to decide to go with wind or solar, and it's not considered baseload because it's intermittent power. What kind of a facility would they match a wind and solar units with? Coal or a nuclear? I don't think those.
No, those don't work well. They're
Okay.
they're both base load. That is, they're plants that it's sort of hard to run them up and down and output quickly. In general, wind and solar match well with either hydro plants, which can be turned on and off quickly, or a relatively inefficient kind of gas-fired plant. That is a regular gas plant as opposed to a combined cycle gas
Yeah, because
plant.
once coal gets going, you want to keep that fire going.
Right.
And once nuclear gets going, you don't want to zip them off. They're not easily off and on with the off-on switch.
Well, they go off easily.
They go off
They
easily.
take a long time to get back up.
Yeah.
But I need to point out that is by design, not for economical operation because of the upfront expense of building nuclear power plants. Quite obviously, naval nuclear power plants can maneuver quite quickly. So
Well,
it's not limited by being nuclear, it's limited by what it's designed for economics.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that because the nuclear industry gets confused, I think, A, with the bomb, and B, then I understand these submarines will the nukes on the subs, which run around the world, are put in place and not touched for 20 years. I mean, their maintenance is much less, but you can correct me, as compared to a nuclear plant. So how do all these things in our mind get mixed up, and what do we need to understand about them?
Well, understand that there are differences, and you always have to go back to basic science. And in the case of naval nuclear power plants, they have a completely different mission. They do not run full bore all the time, as electric generating plants do. So during a year, they burn a lot less fuel. But their economics are much different too. So they can use much more expensive, that is highly enriched fuel, in order to last for 20 years. For instance, the aircraft carriers only need refueling once every 20 years. But,
okay, that's the part that I had heard.
Yeah.
So it's so good to try to straighten these things out.
but they can do that by the fact that, first of all, they don't run at full power all the time, and second of all, they have much more expensive fuel. But that beats the competition, particularly if you're a submarine. You know, there's no competition between nuclear and conventional submarines.
Yes, yeah. Go ahead.
One of the things I would like to say is that, here in the United States, we started nuclear power, okay? And we've educated a lot of other countries, and they're taking the lead on nuclear power. France is 80-90% of their countries run on nuclear power.
That they get all their electric
They perfected it. They perfected it, and they've got 80-90% of your country running nuclear power. Now, that is amazing to me, that one country will take that much pride in running a nuclear power plant and running it efficient.
Well, France, I think, I've heard it was up against the walls, but their air was filthy.
Yep.
And they just grasped onto this new technology in a different way.
Well, they did. We had a representative from the French embassy talking to the American Nuclear Society Northeastern section here a few years ago, and he related this story to us just as you said. At the oil crisis in 1970s, the government took a hard look at their situation and basically concluded they had no coal, they had no oil, so they had no choice. So
Okay.
it was a government mandated and pushed program. Of course, the one utility in the country is owned by the federal government.
So that was
they,
easier.
So they can pursue a uniform national program. And they have gone ahead there, as Tony said, 80% nuclear, and making money hand over fist, selling power to Italy and other places that were not so enthusiastic about nuclear power.
And France has gone the next step. They also, what
They recycle. I was pleased that as a blogger, they invited a bunch of pro-nuclear bloggers to visit their recycling facilities in France, and I was one of them. And so they ship all their spent fuel to one place where it's stored in one spent fuel pool at one place, and then it's taken from there and cut up into smaller sections that can be basically dissolved, and the new fuel is made from that. It's called MOX fuel, mixed oxide, because it has both uranium and plutonium as fuel in it. And it was all very, very impressive to visit and to see they're actually doing this, and they're actually coming in with trucks with the spent fuel and sending out MOX fuel, which they sell all over the world, actually. MOX fuel has been in use since the 70s.
and MOX fuel, that's a term I'm not familiar with.
MOX means mixed oxide, which means that it's a mixture of uranium and plutonium as the fissile material. And as I say, it sounds very exotic to us in the United States because we don't use it, but it has been used in Europe since the 70s. It's not really, the new technology.
Okay.